beyond. We're beyond the beyond. We're beyond the curse.
And speaking of the beyond, I follow a few pages, accounts on Twitter. I'm not calling it X. Shove your X. It's Twitter, okay? One called Dawn of the Discs and a few others. And they basically, they announce this is now being released in 4K. This is coming out. And I was like,
I've just recently started following Dawn of the Discs myself.
Really good account. And I can't remember who's doing it, but there's a house by the cemetery. I'm like, what? Where's the Beyond one? It's probably Arrow. I think it's Arrow. Where's my Beyond 4K? I don't want House by the Cemetery. I mean, I kind of want all three, but firstly, I want the Beyond.
You want the movie that you actually enjoyed.
I want
First and foremost. The others are just filler for the completionist in you.
Apparently it did come out, but I haven't been able to see it anywhere.
No, the one I'm looking forward to most at the minute is the Rosemary's Baby one, but I think there's another Exorcist one on the way as well.
Yeah, the 50th anniversary. Yeah. The Rosemary's Baby one has really nice artwork on it, though.
I love that artwork.
Yeah,
it's absolutely fantastic.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a great image. Really, really good. I'm looking forward to the might splurge on the Exorcist one.
Yeah, that's quite tempting, that one, isn't it? I think it's around 50. If I'm looking on Amazon, for example, that it is. That can't be right. Oh no, 4K not available. Blu-ray though. Blu-ray collector's edition at 18. Oh no, that's that's the German version called Der Exorcist. Never mind. A lot of these 4K collector's editions you can't actually get on Amazon. They're very specific. They're like they're only from, like we said, Arrow, Screen Factory. They're not being widely available.
Yeah, no, generally released. The one I'm seeing at the minute, eBay is coming up a lot for it, and it's around the £100 to £200 mark.
Yeah, that's becoming the problem.
I mean, there is a 4K edition of it for like £20 on Amazon, but it's not the big special edition box set.
It's a problem, but at the same time, I guess for collectors, and I am a collector, but I don't feel like I fall into this reasoning. It makes it more special.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just click one buy on Amazon. You've got it. You have to find it.
You got to
look for it. You got to put the work in.
You do, but by the same token, it's really
annoying.
Not everybody can have it. It's not that easy to come by, and it's not that easy to find.
Which is was the most frustrating for me with Shout Factory. With they do some incredible collector's editions, and they do the 4K Halloweens, and they do not post to the UK.
Right.
And that is so frustrating. So to buy the 4K Halloweens, you have to buy them individually on Amazon, and they're £30 each. Whereas you could get the bundle for like 80. I think it's like the first 6. Yeah. Like I've got the bundle of H2O Resurrection. 6 H2O and Resurrection. There you go. That's the 3 greatest ones.
The Warner Brothers shop does have a 50th anniversary steelbook collector's edition. It's got like a almost cell shaded Reagan on the cover, which is nice, but again, it's not.
Oh, nice!
It's not the big box set with
not the big cheese.
All the books and the poster and everything. Which £100 on Amazon seems to be like the best I can find. On eBay, sorry, seems to be the best I can find for that at the minute, with just sort of a cursory look.
It's also the same with the 2013 4K Evil Dead that I bought. I had to get it on eBay because I couldn't get it on the UK Amazon or HMV or Zavvi. They don't exist. It's a shame. It's the slow disappearance of physical media. Whereas now, I feel like a lot of work, a lot of effort is being put into these collector's edition releases nowadays.
Yeah.
Compared to DVDs, where they never felt that special. These feel really special, and they're just not. The one I showed you the other day, it's not horror, but the Fifth Element 4K collector's edition that finally turned up. It's downstairs. It's absolutely beautiful. There's so much content inside it, and it's just a nice item to have.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, that Exorcist one, there's a, I don't know if it's a bundle, but it's it's limited to 2,000 globally.
Oh wow! Yeah, there we go about collectors.
According to this, right? Yeah. But this one comes with a BFI book.
Oh,
so the
sweet.
British Film Institute, book on the movie as well. I mean, it's 240 quid.
Ooh.
So might be a little bit too much, but I definitely might go for that other steelbook version.
I like to pay the mortgage.
Yeah, see, I like to pay the mortgage and eat food as well.
Food is good. Food is very good. Yeah,
I've grown quite accustomed to eating. Clearly, but that maybe that 45 quid version steelbooks, that's pretty nice. You still get some art and lobby card repros, and there's a 40-page booklet in that as well. There's still some cool stuff in there.
Yeah.
Just doesn't come in a big Bible-themed box.
Yeah, that's what it needs to be in. Yeah.
Maybe.
Are we on to part 2 of our part 3 of our Monsters of Universal catch-up?
Part 2 of our part 3. Our third, yes, we are. Our third Universal monster, which is The Mummy.
The Mummy, and not Brendan Fraser Mummy, even though it's a brilliant film.
It's not Brendan Fraser Mummy, but it is. It kind of is. It's the same story.
You're right, it is.
It is, but I didn't realize that it was, because I was watching this, and my first thought, because we've done Dracula and because we've done Frankenstein, which are obviously based on like the Victorian novels, or serializations, like written word literature. I was like, right, The Mummy. What is the provenance for this? Does this have a book that it's based on? Where does the story come from? And it's just fabrication. It is just made up. It's probably heavily influenced by the Howard Carter discovery of King Tutankhamun in 1922.
Yeah.
And the supposed curse of the mummy that went along with those excavations. Are you aware of this?
Yes, I did read this up. Yeah, about the backstory.
So for those of you that perhaps not in the know, when Howard Carter discovered King Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, found all the wondrous things, the very famous gold death mask that, if you think of Egyptian pharaohs, you probably think of treasures that came out of that tomb. There was a couple of freak accidents in the subsequent years that a couple of people involved in those excavations died, and it was attributed to a curse that had been placed on the mummy's tomb. Apparently, no such reference to a curse on that mummy's tomb exists. From what I read, I don't think there was any sort of hieroglyphs that say anything about people being cursed if they open it. But because the people involved there have been curses found on mummies' tombs and sarcophagi and things that has been found, but I don't think there was anything specific on King Tutankhamun's tomb. But people died, and the sort of like 2 and 2 got put together, and they died because of the mummy's curse. And then Hollywood got hold of it and made the mummy, and that seems to be the provenance for the story of the Mummy, Universal's 1932 movie. And I was watching it and was halfway through before I realised that the 90s Brendan Fraser like family action movie is the same plot. I did not realise that it was that close. I mean, I kind of knew like, they'd made a new Mummy movie based on those old Mummy movies.
Yeah.
But I didn't realise that they were so closely linked, where we actually have, the same character, Imhotep, and the same plot line about resurrected priestesses and things like that. I didn't realise it was...
Because there's so much more story and budget with obviously the 90s one. Yeah. It's a lot more fleshed out, if I intended. Did we introduce this? Yes. Hello, folks. This is the Dreadcast. This is 1932's The Mummy on our Monsters of Universal. We talked about it. Because of how messed up our recording has been with this,
it's because
I just wanted to properly introduce this.
So, if you're not aware, this is the
If you're not aware, even though you clicked on the video that it's titled...
I mean, it's on the same channel and all the... It's probably the usual place where you do listen to us.
Probably seen the big artwork. And
you've probably guessed that it is.
Just
it is
to clarify what we're doing right now. And you gave us the backstory. Perfect.
Yes.
I'm not hanging around.
Neither does the movie.
I liked the first 10 minutes, and I was kind of done for the rest of it.
Yeah. Exactly the same. I'm gonna just say it right at the top of the episode. This was the weakest of the ones that we've done so far for me.
Yeah.
Starts off strongly, and then a whole lot of not very much happens.
It's a whole lot of Lord Fear from Knightmare looking into his mystical ball, seeing what's going on in the dungeon. Whereas he really bothered me about that, right? He's looking into his mirror or whatever it is, his pool, and he's watching Dr. Muller, played by Edward Van Sloan, for the third time. The camera is following him, so his vision in this pool that he can see like through space and time, it's not a still image, it's a camera panning around. It's like it's basically just Lord Fear. But the first 10 minutes, that was first 10-15, it's
I mean, I've got a similar note. It starts well, but once we get to what the crux of the plot is, which is that Ardeth Bey. Ardeth Bey. Got there eventually. It's written down as well. Ardeth Bey. Once we get to the crux of the plot, which is that Ardeth Bey is in fact Imhotep the Mummy, who's resurrected right at the beginning of the film and then sort of disappears, and we don't. Which is another point I'll get to in a second. So once we get to the crux of that plot, it slows down considerably. Whereas they should be like, right, we know that this guy is actually the Mummy, and let's go get him. They just like do nothing for a bit.
They do nothing. They and like you said, they know.
They keep saying it. They keep saying like, we'll have to stop him. We'll have to stop him.
We've got to do something. Yeah.
But first, Jin. Like, just they do nothing about it at all.
I wrote that exactly down. How did I wrote it down? Wrote it down. Hang on. This is so important, obviously. Yeah, I basically wrote down how there's no physical interaction whatsoever. I feel like there's a part where they can see Ardeth. He really raises his arm to do some sort of magical power that he has. There's no lunging. There's no. What about fire?
Well, the other thing as well is there's no real explanation as to how they work out Imhotep's plan either.
No,
somebody just rocks up and says, "I know what he's up to. Let's go to the museum." And they go, "Yeah, all right then." After like sitting around for a bit, going like, "Oh, we should stop him at some point." Like suddenly they just know. It's very weirdly rushed, but we are jumping right to the end.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, we're getting angry.
We are jumping right to the end. There's a skirt back to the beginning of the movie. We have a nice little miniature effect.
Yes, I did note that. I like that.
The spinning pyramid and the title card. I like that a lot as well.
Doesn't scream horror.
It doesn't. Neither does the use of Swan Lake, which then kicks in again straight away. So we've got our classic Universal use of getting their money's worth of the Tchaikovsky license, and bunging Swan Lake in there. And then what I assumed was location footage of actual Egyptian ruins.
I assumed that it looked like I think is it Valley of the Kings?
It looked like Valley of the Kings.
I've always
know specifically.
I've always had a great interest in ancient Egypt. I really have, and I love everything about it. But it's one of those things that I'd love to. I've always wanted to get into. I want to get some books and start reading and learning. But like most hobbies and interests in life, I don't have the time. It's just one of those things that it's fascinating, ancient Egypt, because there's just so much history regarding it.
Yeah. Huge amount. Well, as you know, Tom, I am an archaeologist.
Shut up.
And I have zero interest in ancient Egypt, so I would.
Is that because it's already been done?
Like to go on record and say I know nothing about in any real sense. I know nothing about ancient Egypt. So, like, don't be coming at me saying, "Well, you're an archaeologist, you should know," because I would
never do that.
I don't know. No, I know you wouldn't, but I wasn't necessarily talking to you. This was out there into the ether, just to put it on record. But if you are aware that that is what I do as a day job, I have no hand in any Egyptology stuff. Although it was nearly my degree. To say I'm not that interested in it, I very nearly did a specific Egyptology degree, but that's another story. It's just not a period that's really ever appealed to me all that much. So, there's cool stuff, but I always thought, I always leaned more towards ancient history anyway, which is how I ended up doing what I do. Yeah. But for me, it was more like Greeks and Romans, and I was kind of less interested in Egypt.
I understand that. Yeah, I understand.
But yeah, I mean, it is like the span of ancient Egyptian culture and stuff is huge.
It's so vast.
One of the big sort of early centers of civilization and all that sort of stuff. So I think it is. It looked like location footage of genuine Egyptian sites, Egyptian ruins. Couldn't necessarily tell you which ones, but I did look up where this, and a lot of this was filmed in the Mojave Desert. So not on location in Egypt, which made me think it must be stock footage. And there's probably reams of stock footage of Egyptian tombs. I would have thought pyramids and things like that. Because, I mean, like I said, in my research, I couldn't find anything that said they filmed on location in Egypt for any of it. So I assume it was stock footage. But a nice little setup and a nice little introduction to here we are in Egypt. And speaking of archaeologists, we have them ruining things as usual. Archaeologists in movies are always trouble. Always.
I 100%. Bet you are very nitpicky with that.
I mean, I'm not so much because generally TV and movie archaeology is not archaeology.
Yeah.
It's just not. It's nothing like what we actually do.
Like Time Team.
Still. I mean, yeah, it's just like Time Team. I mean, I've been on a lot of jobs where I've only had 3 days to do a ridiculous amount of work, so it does still, that bit's kind of accurate. But I mean, let's have it right. Archaeology is not that exciting. Like, the day-to-day of it is not that exciting. But way back when, sort of the early, essentially when archaeologists were just grave robbers and picking up, stealing shiny things from other countries to fill museums.
Yep.
Then that's the archaeology that movies tend to go with. But it's always trouble. Indiana Jones, just, you know, all kinds of trouble. Even like John Carpenter's Ghosts on Mars and Doom is archaeologists.
God, pulling out a Ghosts on Mars reference. Wow.
Because it's my mental list of movies where archaeology has caused all the trouble.
Yeah, that film sucks.
I kind of like it.
We talked about it in Species.
It's a guilty pleasure, but I do kind of like Ghosts of Mars. But yeah, if the opportunity to do archaeology on Mars ever comes up, I'm not doing it, because everything movies and TV have told me is that it's going to cause nothing but trouble.
Yeah.
So it opens on this group of archaeologists, and they've, again, throwing us straight in, they've excavated a tomb. They've got a sarcophagus there, they've got a mummy, and a whole bunch of stuff. And it's it's kind of mimicking that sort of Howard Carter-esque discovery of, we got a whole bunch of stuff. And they make a little reference to there being some sort of curse. And then the mummy comes alive.
Yeah.
They read a scroll and he comes alive.
Yeah, that kind of sums up the bit we're talking about that we both liked. The thing is, as good as it was compared to the rest of the film, Boris Karloff as the mummy, he's as Imhotep. Imhotep? Yeah. He's
Imhotep, yes.
He's not, they've just got it, like, say I'm here, it's just stood up in the corner. Like, we'll get to that in a minute. It's just stood up. Mm-hmm. And they've taken the top off and he's just stood up there. And when they get the close-ups of Boris, you can see him breathing. You can see him,
really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's got his hands crossed at his shoulders. You can see him breathing. But visually, that's such, I guess for the time, horrific. That's so much more of a striking horror visual than what he is for the rest of the film, wearing a fez in disguise. You know? Yeah,
well,
and that's what he is on the poster as well. The poster is great. I love the poster for this. It is that. It's Boris Karloff wrapped up in bandages, all dirty and gross looking. That's what you think of.
That is what you think of, and that's kind of what I was building to in a really roundabout way. But that's what I was expecting for this movie. I feel really misled by what I was expecting. Yeah, that it would be some kind of Scooby-Doo-esque archaeologist running around a tomb in the dark with the mummy shambling after him, chase sequences, and there is none of that. There is nothing. Like I say, the mummy as the mummy is a fraction. It is the opening scene. You don't really see him move all that much. You get a hand creeping in, and then some bandages trailing out of the door, and Matey just starts laughing.
Oh wow, his laugh
absolutely loses his shit, which is understandable. But
Ralph, he was like the assistant to the is it Norton, the main archaeologist. But
don't ask me. I have real difficulty.
I get the idea.
Keeping track of who any of these characters were. I'll be honest.
I get the idea. It's all good. But his laugh, his maniacal laugh was fantastic. I thought. Like that laugh was a beautiful portrayal of, I've just seen some otherworldly shit that shouldn't be happening.
Broken me, absolutely broken me.
And I don't know how to respond to this, apart from the fact that I think I'm losing my mind. And I think he nailed it with that laugh. Like it's really disturbing, the laugh actually. Or something. It's very maniacal. So Ralph Norton, the assistant to. Professor Pearson, I believe. And then after that, when we flash forward, it's Wemple's. So they're brothers, I believe.
Okay.
Well, it says here Frank Wemple and Joseph Wemple, but they call each other Wemple.
Maybe brothers.
I don't know.
I'm just trying to think if I've got a note about it. But I did find, and I made a note of it just to try and explain it to myself, that I do struggle generally with these old films keeping track of who the various characters are. And I think a lot of it is that it just comes down to there's a lot of like well-spoken white men in tuxedos and suits most of the time.
Short hair to the side.
Even if there's an age difference, they all kind of look and sound similar. Yeah. And I find it really difficult to sort of, really know who anybody is.
Yeah, completely agree.
Especially as they seem to shoehorn in a bunch of characters that just don't do anything. Like, they're the same. They're all essentially the same person. You could probably cut out 3 or 4 people of the cast and not make any real difference. But yeah, the basic setup is that there's one excavation that they find Imhotep in, and then it's a subsequent season of the same excavation. But Matey went mad, and it's maybe a relative of his that's taken over. And then we get Ardeth. I've got lots of just disparaging comments about archaeologists in my first note. There is a good point. One of them does make a good point that archaeology is much more to learn from the broken pottery than the sensational finds. And I think it's all well and good that you've said that, but quite literally, you're all about the sensational finds. So in that sort of initial animation scene of Imhotep coming alive, again we've got like a no sound, no score, like very silent, very quiet bit, which does just add that extra creepiness to the mummy's movements. But unfortunately, like that's it. That is it.
That's it.
In terms of the mummy being the mummy, in bandages and shuffling and shambling around. It's not. It's 10 years. So we then fast forward 10 years to another excavation, and Karloff returns as this Ardeth Bey character, who is, it's quite clearly. It's almost kind of laughable. They've just taken a bandage off and put a fez on him, and it's like done.
Oh, I am Mr. Snrub.
But he essentially turns up with an artifact and says, "You should be digging over here because you'll find something. I think you'll find something over here," which happens so often when I'm at work. It's just some random passerby. I'll go, "You're digging it wrong place, lad. You need to be over there."
It's like the guy at the pub. That fruit machine's about to pay out.
And I think, like, but they're building the hospital or whatever it is here. That's why we're here. We're not just. So many people still think that we are just essentially treasure hunters. And like we just drive around in a van and go, "Let's dig in that field today and see what's there." Like we're actually here for a reason. It's not just because this is where the pin landed in the map.
Yeah. Where this bothered me then. If it's roughly 10 years, I believe, right? Or do they specifically say 10 years time difference between when Ralph basically lost the mummy? Because I think there's a mention of it, say it being 10 years. I've written 10 years later, and I'm assuming I've got that from the movie. I think it's mentioned. I think they say, "Oh, that was 10 years ago when whoever," and he went crazy. Where has Ardeth been? Where has Imhotep been this whole time?
I mean, waiting for the British Museum to come back to Egypt, I guess. I don't know. Waiting for somebody else.
To
come. I know what you mean. What has he been doing for 10 years? He could have.
Where did he get that fez from?
Where
did he?
At some point, that's a missing scene that I want to see. How does he go from bandages? Is there a scene of him like in somebody's backyard, like taking washing off the line in his bandages, taking a pheasant?
Also, he he is now in the early 1900s, right? I mean, this is set at the same time, 1920. No, yeah, 10 years later, so it's in the 1930s. They're doing the big. He is from what, 2000 BC? Is it around that time, ancient Egypt? I'm not overly sure.
Possibly even older.
Like I said, I'm fascinated.
Maybe 3000, 4000 BC.
Fascinated in it. I know fuck all about it because I haven't had time. So, if he's been in our world, for 10 years around the early 1900s, he's experiencing all this at the time, modern technology, modern world, modern lifestyle. How has he managed to survive for 10 years? Maybe with his powers and his ring. How has he managed to survive and sort of integrate himself and make it people believe he's part of? Is it just the Fez? Is the Fez doing it? Is the Fez the thing that is making people go, hey, look at this slick guy.
This guy
knows
what he's
this
going.
Guy
he's
knows
slick
what's
up
up.
and come
Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Maybe
he's
because he has an entire layer as well, like that is decked out.
Yeah.
Like his like apartment. Because I'm assuming it is. It's not like he takes her off people off to a cave or anything. But inside it, he's got his pool. And it's but it's just a house in the town. I don't know. You would never really see it from the outside.
And he's got a dope-looking cat as well called Bass.
It's like normal house on the front, and inside it is like Curse of the Mummy's tomb. It is like pillars and ankhs and Anubis statues and a big smoking pool of water that you can see the future in, and it is very creative. Like that's an MTV Cribs I want to see. It is, it's weird.
Imhotep's crib. Here's my ball of ass looking glass.
We got the Escalade on the 22.
Yeah. So we got the crystal in the fridge.
This is where the magic happens. A Scarface poster in the movie room.
Did you ever see Dave Chappelle's sketch on Cribs? Sorry, I just funny.
Yeah.
We got these
retrospective of Cribs the other day.
We got these Tyrannosaurus Rex eggs. There's only 2 of these in the world. Anyway, sorry.
So he does. He turns up as like I said, there's a lot of like missing stuff of missing scenes that we need to see, because obviously fast forward to the 90s and Brendan Fraser's version, Imhotep does have his little helpers, that his little sidekicks and his little minions that do stuff for him. As far as we can tell, Ardeth Bey / Imhotep in this is working completely on his own. And I mean, I guess that's what he spent the 10 years in between doing, is working out how to function in 1930s society, and waiting for the Brits to come back and start digging stuff up again. Because I think he does make a point I think when he brings that artifact in, he does make a point that Egyptians are forbidden from digging up their ancestral tombs, but it's fine for other people, fine for foreigners to do it. But this is that classic old school archaeology excavations where the white people, the colonials, sit round in their deck chairs under parasols and just get the locals to do all the actual manual labor.
But because he doesn't, he doesn't
build our museums.
He doesn't get his assistant / kind of slave until this part of the film. So he wouldn't have had him throughout these 10 years. So he's interior decorated his own place over the last 10 years and learned what's what. They get he sort of insinuates that they should be digging over here, and he's essentially trying to orchestrate the excavation of the body of his former love. Yeah.
So if you're familiar with the 90s movie, the Brendan Fraser Mummy, it's the same thing. Imhotep was put to death in the past because of a forbidden relationship with a priestess.
Well, no. Yeah, she's called the woman our female lead is called Helen, that he uses as like a body to reincarnate.
Well, she contains it's the Helen has the spirit of
Yeah.
his former love within her. He's the resurrected spirit of her, and he wants to do the old mumbo jumbo, old switcheroo, and put her spirit back in her body, and they'll be together. So it's a broad story, and it wasn't until sort of 3/4 through where I realised that it was the same thing that was happening. I think I was still kind of waiting for like some shambling bandage action.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going back and forth with the whole 90s one, he takes a while to transform because he's got the cheesy CGI of he's like half bones and a bit of flesh, and then he progressively
but
throughout the film,
arguably that's where the horror comes from, because every time he sort of he keeps like inhaling spirit souls or whatever. Every time he attacks somebody, he gets a little bit more of his flesh back until he looks like Arnold Vosloo.
Yeah,
and
we get none of that.
We get none of that, but arguably that would be like a good place for sort of the horror element to come from.
Yeah.
We just have this. Well, we don't really have any sort of. He's not an antagonist. They randomly decide that or realize that he's an ancient mummy.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of chicanery, late night antics in the museum where somebody gets killed off camera.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like a that's not the British Museum. That's in Cairo. That's Cairo Museum.
Yeah, it's everything. I think, as far as I can tell, the entire movie does take place in Egypt, in Cairo. But there's a lot more just sort of old white dudes in suits talking in lounges than there is like hot mummy action. It's just.
Were you
Don't Google that, by the way.
Don't. Are you aware at all of like how people were mummified back in the ancient Egypt? Because I've been looking it up, and there's a lot
to a certain extent,
a lot of contradicting reports I've seen on it. It's not a report. It's not a news report. A lot of contradicting articles with the information, and the only one I could find that kind of really sums it up the best was that has one on if you were rich and elite or middle class and poor. Like poor, the belly was cleansed with an oil enema, the body was covered with natron, natron,
yeah, I think, yeah.
Treatment for 70 days before we return to the lower ones. Middle class, syringes were filled with oil from the cedar tree and injected into the abdomen, dissolving the bowels and interior organs. Body was covered with a same natron treatment, and her body was returned. Yeah. Rich and elite, the brain was drawn out through the nostrils using a crooked piece of iron. Yeah. Contents of the belly were taken out of the interior and cleaned using palm wine and aromatics. Belly was filled with pure myrrh, cassia, and other spices and sewn together again. The corpse was covered in same thing. Nothing about eyes, right?
Okay.
When he awakens, he has eyeballs. So, right, so they're still there. But when he awakens, there's this magical power. Obviously, like his brain's gone. Does it make a new brain? The brain is gone. Like, it's not dead. It's literally out of his skull.
In a nutshell, his brain and all his internal organs will have been removed, and
everything's gone.
Yeah, and he's filled with a secret blend of herbs and spices.
Yeah, secret. But again, at least with the new one, we don't see it, but we get the progression of him coming back. This we get nothing. And if you know something about being mummified, you'd think in an instant he's fine. He's fine again. It's
well, not only fine, thriving. He's got his swinging bachelor pad in central Cairo. He's got his fez at a jaunty angle, and he's good to go. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a misnomer calling it the Mummy, isn't it? Really, because there's not much actual mummy in it. And there's a lot of jumps. It jumps to the post excavation. Everything's now in the museum. So there's this sort of like he needs to get into the museum to get the spell book, because they suddenly decide that this scroll is important, and they're trying to burn it. To destroy, they figure that that'll destroy him if they burn this scroll.
But he specifies as well. He quotes, "You cannot harm me," like he's immortal or something. And I'm just thinking, can we not burn you?
I've got a note here that sums it up quite well. They know Ardeth is an evil mummy, and they occasionally talk about finding and destroying him, but it all feels very casual, like he's a wobbly shelf they're meaning to fix. It doesn't feel as if there's any urgency to it. It's like, oh, at some point we'll get to the sorting out of that mummy.
Or like a creaky step on your stairs.
Yeah. Like, oh, the drawer's stuck. Oh,
Yeah.
we'll fix that at some point. Yeah. They work out that Ardeth is Imhotep and just casually have a conversation with him about it. Like, he comes round to the house and they're just like, oh, so you're an ancient mummy, eh? Well, one of these days we'll get round to destroying you.
Just you wait. Just you don't. Oh, you don't want to know what's going to happen. Oh,
Yeah.
That it's so. Go on. So.
Well, it's kind of frustrating and it's kind of annoying. And as a side note, we need to talk about Frank. We need to talk about how thirsty Frank is. Every time Frank is talking to Helen, is it?
He's after her. He's gagging.
Yeah, but he's after her to. It's like she can't say anything without him saying, well, if you just let me whisk you away from all this, it's like, oh, I'm kind of warm and I need to sit down. He's like, well, if you let me like marry you and have children with me, everything will be fine. It's like any opportunity to shoehorn his feelings in there.
Oh, my darling,
taking that chance.
She could be
so thirsty.
She could literally be saying, there is a mummy that's been resurrected from 3,000 years ago, and he's after me. Don't worry, my darling. We'll have a lovely evening together.
We have exactly that scene. In fact, there's a scene where Helen's dog is killed by Imhotep, or at least Imhotep's manservant, who I think is credited as the Nubian.
Yes. That was a choice.
Yeah,
that was a choice of words used for his title.
But ultimately, she's not that bothered. So she goes missing, doesn't she? She's sort of aware that that Imhotep's got this power over her, and it's because of this like spirit, this alternate spirit that she's got. And she goes round to see Imhotep and gets her dog killed, and he shows her a vision in the pool. In fact, he shows her who she is, doesn't he? He shows her the past and this.
He shows basically what happened.
Yeah. But then there's odd reactions all round, like Frank and Helen, and this is how I wrote it down. Frank and Helen, she's talking about having another life inside her, and she's going to try and wander off, and like, you've got to look out for me. Like, you know, I'm probably going to try and go to him, and I'm scared and I'm frightened, and he just says, "Oh, I'll look after you. Yeah, I'll look after you." And it's like, not quite the same sort of urgency. But then that's it, and then that filters into this fact that they all know that Ardeth Bey is an ancient evil mummy come back to life.
Yeah,
and they don't care. There's not enough urgency about it.
There really isn't. No.
And then a good, like you said, a good chunk of the movie is this sort of like waiting for them to decide that it's a problem and we'll go and sort it out. But I suppose there is no urgency, because it's not like he's on a huge killing spree. It's not like he's opening a portal to the underworld and releasing hell on earth.
No, but it's still highly unnatural that we have someone from 3,000 years ago that's now alive.
Yeah. That is the main crux of it, is that and nobody really is that bothered. I mean, they're not even that bothered from like a purely scientific, interested, like, holy shit, this is amazing point of view. Like, they're just indifferent to the whole thing. It's so bizarre. It's so weird.
I noticed with this though that for the most part it is just a bunch of grown men with smart hair and smart suits talking, discussing what's going on. But there's a constant theme with these films now so far that we have the lead female in peril and our lead male protagonist constantly worried, concerned about this lead female. So Dracula, you have Mina and John.
Yeah.
Frankenstein, Elizabeth and Victor. And now we have Helen and Frank. Like, it's very similar. And again, they're all smartly dressed men, obviously of the time, are just very concerned and very worried and wanted to, I guess in some cases very thirsty, but it's always about the lead female in peril.
Yeah, they're very much that sort of the hero saves the damsel in distress.
Yeah.
Angle. Up to a point. Because in this, ultimately, the gods just fix it. When we get to the end. Like,
oh Christ, they do.
Alive.
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
Nothing. There's no human agency. Ultimately, they go to face Imhotep, and the gods sort it out.
Yeah.
And strike him down, and jobs are good. And like,
which we don't even see.
But it's like that thing about Indiana Jones, like not being any use in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like, he makes everything more complicated.
Yeah.
And if he'd have just left the Nazis to take the Ark, they would have destroyed themselves.
It would have happened regardless. Yeah.
Everything would have been fine. Yeah. It's a little bit like that nothing, and which is probably a good thing, because as we've said, they don't have any sort of pressing need to go and solve the problem. But when they do finally pull their finger out, they do nothing. They achieve nothing, and the gods.
Yeah, you're right. I'm trying to think. Do they intervene in any way that causes?
I think
catalyst
they do.
Do they cause a rupture to his plan? Like, if they were not involved, would he have perished at the end? Because they tried to burn the scroll, but he beats them to it. He catches them on his his amazing looking glass, and kills the doctor. No, the professor. Kills the professor.
Yeah,
he's trying to burn it.
He's force choke at a distance, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then and I think he steals the scroll, or he obtains it somehow. I don't think we see him do it, but the scroll goes missing from the good people, the heroes' possession. But they go after him because they again, it's not really explained how, but suddenly somebody turns up and says, "Oh right, I know what he's up to. Let's go to the museum." And they go to the museum, and there's a ritual taking place. But no, I don't think they have any sort of strong hand agency in like invoking the gods to come and get him. No. I think they have a conversation about how like this is not right, and you know the past is the past and leave it there. Or I can't even remember, to be honest. I think I'd kind of tuned out at this point. But I don't. It's not like they read a spell or say a prayer. I don't think there's any agency in that part. I think it's just like this is against the gods, and you know, suddenly the gods hear that and go, "Oh shit, yeah, it is. I'll stop that." And the statue comes to life and laser beams him or something. I forget.
We mentioned it earlier. His crib, man, or whatever it is, it's not great in the art design aspect. It's too clean. It's too neat. It looks like a set, and I know I've probably said that for some of the other films, but this really specifically. There's not much character to it. It's like a blank stage, and they've hired some cheap props. It's like put that there, put that there, put that there. That's it.
I mean,
especially as well when they do the flashback. Sorry, when they do the flashback to him back in ancient Egypt, and there's like the secret door that touches and it slides open,
That's
pulls out
that's like really old style silent movie footage as well, isn't it? It feels like you're expecting the cards to come up with the with the words on and stuff. It's
because some of it feels a tiny bit sped up. The way that some of them move.
It's like 1.5 speed, like that old film, that really old film footage looks, and you kind of expect like a piano soundtrack, like like a movie from 1910, not 1930. I was just gonna say about the set and stuff. Like we used to have a nightclub called Pharaoh's that had an ancient Egyptian theme.
Amazing.
It was absolutely horrendous.
Did they dress up?
No, the staff didn't. But like,
okay.
they were basically there was just a bunch of shit painted gold with some like hieroglyphs on the walls and an occasional like mock papier-mâché like a mummy, like sarcophagus case on or whatever. It was really, really bad.
That's what's really tough with it, because obviously this is black and white, but it's hard to get out of your head that they look like they're just in fancy dress. But it's like maybe this was their attire. Maybe it was clean and pristine, but at the same time, seeing Boris Karloff and the extras wearing like the headpieces and the jewelry and the spark, it looks like a stage play with some cheap costumes and outfits.
Yeah, like a high school stage.
Yeah,
as well. Amateur dramatics.
It's hard to get past that. Whereas, like, okay, that may as well what it looked like. Fine, okay, but it's not something.
But probably not. It doesn't look lived in.
It doesn't look lived in at all. Yeah.
No, it does. It's jarring for several reasons, I suppose. I mean, it's not even as lived in as something like Spartacus.
No.
Which was, all right, maybe 30 years later or something, but even then, everything looks too clean and clinical.
Clinical. It's a good way of describing it.
But then, like you said, then the sped up footage and stuff. It's bizarre.
Yeah,
I'd forgotten about that little flashback, to be honest.
Yeah, the whole flashback scene, because then it ends with him being mummified.
Mm-hmm.
I quite like that actually, because they didn't just result to like a mannequin or a doll. Like there's Boris Karloff being wrapped up, and he's got some very good expressions on his face as he's doing it, and they completely. It's the same shot. They're wrapping, they go round his face, and that's pretty cool. I like that. And I really actually like the point. They said the slaves were killed who mummified. They didn't say it. Basically the slaves were killed that did the mummification of Imhotep, and then the guards were killed that witnessed this. And it's like, okay, then who killed the guards? Because whoever killed the guards must have known about it. It's like, where's the
where do you cut? Yeah,
where do you
the old lady
stop?
Who swallowed a fly?
Yeah,
and where do you cut it off?
Yeah, that I don't know why that felt very 300. The film 300.
I think there is maybe precedent for that kind of thing occurring, because you get these. I think it was at the I forget which emperor it was. It was the Chinese emperor where the terracotta warriors were found.
Yep.
His tomb. So the terracotta warriors is only a fraction of that tomb. There's
it's
more
huge.
Of that to be excavated. And there's stories of there being like all kinds of Indiana Jones style booby traps in there, and like crossbow bolts firing out of walls, and a map of the world in Mercury and rivers of Mercury, and like loads of really mad stuff in there.
Wow.
And I think it comes from that apparently the designers or it's said that the people who designed and built that tomb were all executed, so they won't be able to share the secrets of the tomb with anybody else.
Yeah.
So I think, and there's probably other stories of similar things happening, maybe with some of the constructions of the pharaohs' tombs as well. How much actual hard evidence for it there is. I couldn't say. Probably, maybe not that much.
Hmm.
But it's one of those things that maybe there's been a couple of instances of it, and I guess it's kind of a cool idea for you know.
It is, yeah, I like it. Yeah,
Your villain or whatever, and it's snowballed. Probably not as prevalent as you maybe think it is, but then it's like that past. The past is a more brutal place in our imaginations and in popular culture and stuff like that. Things were a lot more, you know, depraved and dirty than they are, or supposedly are today. So yeah, whether things like that ever took place, maybe they did in a few odd occasions. Probably not as much as popular culture would make out. But yeah, it is like, where do you draw the line? Like,
yeah. This is a hard film. I gotta be honest, man. Compared, like, I know we're trying to go through these, but this film, and I don't want to try and speak to much negative, have any negative thoughts about this film, but I really didn't have that many thoughts on this film because there wasn't much going on.
No. I think like you said at the beginning, that first the initial setup and Imhotep coming alive, good, and then not very much until it just again has that really abrupt ending. The gods sort it out, the credits roll. Literally, like, we get a brief shot of the plastic skeleton that Imhotep's been reduced to, and credits roll. It finishes like that. Yeah, no, I don't want to. It kind of feels disrespectful to like rag on it as well. Like, I really wanted to like it more than I did.
Yeah,
but it was just kind of boring. It was just a bit rubbish.
It's very disappointing. Like, very disappointing.
Not much happens. I mean, part of it was maybe that sort of surprise that it wasn't like a shambling mummy chasing people around, which is what I was expecting it to be. But then the lack of urgency.
Oh god, yeah.
Just really didn't help, because I got over that quickly, and I was like, okay, fair enough. It's not that's interesting. But Karloff's come back as this Ardeth Bey character. He's clearly the mummy, and now we'll see how they find that out. But then I'm still I got to the end and I was like, well, I don't really know how they found out. They just kind of, I mean, apart from him being like really the spit, but you know what I mean? There was no like big revelation, or it was just like, oh yeah, so he's a mummy then. Yeah, we'll sort that out at some point. Yeah, probably.
We got to sit and talk about it for a while though.
And then a few more scenes of that, and then it finishes. There wasn't really much. There wasn't really much going on.
Yeah,
I'm glad they remade it with Brendan Fraser.
Well, yes. Yeah.
That's far more. It's a far more entertaining version of this same story.
Completely. Yeah. In fact, there's no. The only recommendation for this film is for the historical point of it. It's part of a historical collection of films. Go watch it for that aspect. But yeah, if you want a better version, go watch the fun 90s version. Personally, I don't have anything else to say on this film. I don't hate it. I don't have any more thoughts or opinions on it.
It exists. I mean, we got some sort of pseudo sequels. I don't know if Karloff was in any of the others.
And then, speaking of Karloff, from Frankenstein to this, it's kind of night and day, but I think it's down to the characters that he portrayed. Yeah.
I mean, he plays Ardeth Bey, Imhotep perfectly well. There's nothing wrong with how he plays it. It's just not really very much for him to do.
No,
apart from be a bit mysterious.
Whereas our monster goes on an adventure.
I mean, looking at that classic poster, it comes to life. Karloff, the uncanny as the mummy. It's a fantastic image, and it is all about him being the Mummy, and
Yeah, that
you know,
poster
like
is
I
so
said,
good.
I mean, I love all these old posters; they're
Oh,
all
they're
fantastic.
cracking.
But very, very miss out. There's a couple of ones that show maybe a little bit more the reality of it, but I think the iconic image of him in the Mummy is him in the bandages and not him in the fez.
Yeah,
At least from what I've seen. You know.
Yeah, you couldn't have him in the fez as the main poster child. That wouldn't. That just would not work really at all. But then you're leading the expectations of your audience into thinking, "Oh, this is, what is that? That monster? Oh, he's gone." Okay. Well,
yeah,
I enjoyed that.
Yeah,
It was fun.
yeah, it's a real sort of bait and switch.
Yeah.
From that point of view. Yeah, Miley, I think yours too, but my least favorite of the Universals that we've seen so far.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't have a great deal to say. And I suppose it's funny that I've always, without having watched this before, but just thinking about those sort of classic monsters anyway, I've always kind of ranked the Mummy like quite low down. Along with the Invisible Man as well. I was kind of thinking like, not really. I haven't seen the movie. Can't, looking forward to watching it. But like in terms of like you've Dracula, Frankenstein, a werewolf, the Wolfman. Like, they're like the exciting ones, and then Mummy for me is kind of down that scale. And now having watched it, it's where I mentally, it belongs where I'd already sort of mentally put it.
Yeah, because what do you do with them? Like if it was kept as, excuse me, his mummified state in the beginning, he moves slowly. Does he have magical powers? What do you do with that as a monster? I mean,
it's a fair question. That is a fair question. I guess I would have had them trapped in. I would have had them trapped in a tomb at the moment. Almost like an Evil Dead kind of, just not like the Evil Dead, but in that sort of situation that they've entered the tomb, read from a book. Oh, look, some hieroglyphs. We'll read this. That's a spell that reanimates the mummy, and then they find that they're trapped in the tomb, and the mummy's chasing them around. That's a premise. Maybe he could have had some magical powers as well. Why not?
I think for a black and white film as well, that would add some more scared states for the audience, because they'd probably you could have there'd just be lanterns. You'd be in this tomb,
lots of shadows and stuff like that.
Yeah, and suddenly a hand creeping. Yeah, that would.
Apart from that opening scene with the hand, we have that hand creeping moment, and a couple of bits in the museum after hours, arguably. Most of this is daytime, well lit, somebody's living room. They're just
well
talking.
lit for sure.
Yeah. The whole scene. There's a party or a nightclub or wherever they are. Like there's not much of the horror like setting. There's not really any horror settings. So yeah, like I said, it's 50% me expecting a different movie, and it's 50%
same.
Just not being that impressed with what it actually is, as well. Yeah, not the best.
No,
not the best.
Yeah. So that, folks, is The Mummy, 1932. Do you know what? It's quite nice that we went Dracula, great, Frankenstein, better. It's nice to actually have another end of the spectrum on these films. So we're not just going great. It's nice to talk about good things, but it's nice to have a film maybe we didn't enjoy as much, and then we might come back up with the next one. We might go up and down. And
definitely.
The next film in our series, the Monster Universe, will be The Invisible Man. Now
it will be The Invisible Man. Oh, that's good.
So that's definitely one we've both not seen. So I'm looking forward to that. That would be good.
No.
I've just.
We are back on literature, I believe, with this one, aren't we? Isn't The Invisible Man based on a novel?
Yes. based on H.G. Wells' 1897
It is
novel.
H.G. Wells,
Yeah. But one thing I just noticed, as I don't have the Blu-ray box set on me. Obviously, that Blu-ray box set that we've based this series on is the top films, so we say. But as you look in the Universal Classic Monsters in order, it went Dracula, Frankenstein. Then you've got little other ones that feature called Murders in Rue Morgue, 1932, and also after the Mummy, Island of Lost Souls. Which I'm aware of Island of Lost Souls. It's the I hate saying this. I believe it's the Island of Dr. Moreau, or the Island of Dr. Hibbert, where he changes everyone into animals. The Panther Woman. So and then you've got the Invisible Man. So it's like we are missing a lot of these films. We're just doing the top ones that are on this. It
has just gone for the big ones. I mean, Black Cat. I think
Black Cat.
Is a
the Raven.
It's another Karloff. But yeah, that's not in that box set. So in terms of the box set and this list, I mean, we've got Dracula, we've got Frankenstein, we've got the Mummy, Invisible Man, Bride of Frankenstein's in there, I believe, as well.
Yes, it is.
And then the Wolfman.
Yes, the Wolfman,
which is not. Do we have another werewolf movie before that? Werewolf of London.
There is, yeah. Not on the Blu-ray. You've got Werewolf of London. Yep, that's there. You've also
that is not on the box set, but we've got the Wolfman one.
Yeah, there are so many. There are so many.
And then we're on Phantom of the Opera, but we've got the Mummy's Tomb. We've got more Frankenstein sequels and stuff before that.
It's quite a collection. Then we go on to Abbott Costello. Yeah. So we're only just focusing on the peak ones, but there's a few sprinkled in here that I'd personally like to get to in the future, especially Island of Lost Souls. I'd like to try, and where was it?
We have talked about doing the Abbott and Costello ones.
Yes, the Abbott and Costello ones. Yeah. So yeah. Invisible Man next time, and not Hollow Man. Invisible Man. Even though Hollow Man is a very 5 out of 10 film.
Well, we'll see. Again,
nothing on that.
He's not one of the heavy hitters of the monster genre. You can't expect many more sequels. Somebody's going itching to have another stab at an Invisible Man movie. Doesn't happen very often, does it?
I never got around to seeing the most recent one, but Elizabeth Moss. It was meant to be very good. Came out a year or two ago.
I'd forgotten about that.
Who knows? So we will be getting to the Invisible Man at this rate. That will probably be end of September, I think. But stay tuned to all our social medias, which is the Dreadcast on Twitter and Instagram, and it is Twitter. It's not just X. You can find it on X. It's Twitter. You know it's Twitter. __ Dreadcast, and you can find this podcast and all other past episodes and our previous Monsters of Universal episodes featuring Dracula of 1931 and Frankenstein 1931 on Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, Podbean, and YouTube.
Very good. Very nicely done there. You can also send us an email at thedreadcastpod@gmail.com. Again, as I always say, we like to hear your thoughts, your comments, suggestions, or just, a nice little friendly hello, whatever you want to send. Tom's told you where you can find all past episodes. And I think that about wraps it up from us.
I think it does.
Another issue, another episode.
Another issue, because we've had a busy night. We've had a busy night.
The Dreadcast.
Of the Dreadcast. So, until next time,
guys, stay spooky.
With Pazuzu.